when I met people, they asked me about Tibet. I realized that I don't know that much about Tibet. And then I thought I want to get more involved with Tibetan issues, and so I can be a better ambassador for the Tibetan cause.
Hi, and welcome to Out of Tibet. My name is Tayab Namri Songse Lindup. Today I'll be talking with Balok Chompel. He is the Deputy Secretary General with the district of Sankt Gallen in Switzerland. He'll be telling us all about his multicultural upbringing and why his Italian is so good. How his first job at the post office taught him how to be a real, meticulous Swiss, and his motivation why he got into politics. Spoiler, it's about representation. Say no more. Let's start, and I hope you'll enjoy this pod. Hey Chompel, how are you today?
Hi Namri, I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to talk to you today and that you found time to do this. When you think about Tibet, Chompel, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
First thing is mountains, home, parents, and religion.
When you tell someone you are from Tibet, what do people say to you?
Often they say, wow, so great. I never met someone from Tibet, and they're overwhelmed often, and they think kind of that I'm a spiritual man, a man from the mountain, and all the stereotypes.
I think really a lot of people think that all Tibetans are holy.
I think often this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You always hear it, and then you suddenly begin to believe in it.
What's your favorite Tibetan food or drink?
Oh, my favorite Tibetan food is shabale. Although I didn't have it for a long time, but I'm really longing for shabale, freshly made shabale, really oily and original shabale.
I love how you said that you're longing for chapati. I imagine you getting up in the middle of the night and saying, oh, I can't sleep. Let me have some chapati. That would be great.
Especially the cold shabale.
Really? Cold chapati?
The cold shabale. Sometimes in some situations they're sometimes nicer.
I've never had cold chapati. And
No.
I mean, momos are different, obviously. But, I don't know if you had the same experience. Whenever I have momos, my parents or whoever say, eat them now, the momos. They're hot. They're hot. You have to eat them now. And it's like a crime if you eat them when they're cold.
But sometimes there are leftovers, and then, you find out, there's shabale in the fridge. And you're so hungry, and then you eat them directly out of the fridge, and they're nice.
Do you also like cold pizza?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes you see that in movies, that people have a cold pizza. Cold pizza just sounds terrible. And cold chapati, I might try it next time, and I'll think of you.
I think it depends on your condition in that moment. Everything is relative, no?
So if you're really hungry, obviously, cold chapati will probably be the best.
Definitely.
So what's the first thing you would do if Tibet were free today?
I would go there. Exactly. I haven't been to Tibet. Stupid question. If it was free, of course, I would go there directly, yeah. The thing is, I have never been to Tibet yet. Yeah.
You've never been to Tibet, but you've been to India, I assume.
Yeah, many times. And before you asked me for that interview, I thought that this question will arise definitely, that you will ask me if I went to Tibet already. And the thing is, I've never been to Tibet, yeah. And, although I'm already 50 years old. And I always thought there must be some magic moment when I go to Tibet. And but the thing is, I think there's no such moment. You just have to do it if you have the possibility.
So now we actually found out that you're not holy, but you can look into the future because you knew I was going to ask this question. And I hope to talk to you more about,
So obviously.
yeah, okay. About you. We'll try and get to know you. And before we wrap up, I have this fortune cookie in front of me, and I opened it for you. And
Okay.
the fortune cookie for you says, follow your heart, see what turns up.
Interesting.
So how do you react to that?
I think this is something we all do. We all have in mind when we think of a positive way of living, to live a life that is filled with emotion and a goal that you want to achieve, or I think bring these together, the emotional side, and also the goals you want to attain. I think at least that many people have this goal in life.
I'm not too sure, actually. I think it's really difficult to follow your heart because there's so many things going on in your life, so many pressures. People expect things of you, you expect things of yourself. I think it's a huge challenge to follow your heart. We'll look into your childhood now. When you grew up, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
I was born 1974 in Switzerland, in a small village called Flaville. My parents arrived in February 1973 in the eastern part of Switzerland. The economical situation there was mostly textile industry was there located, and they were in need of many unskilled laborers at that time, and many Tibetans could work directly in the textile industry. I think that was at that time they were looking for a better life. The situation, I think, in northern India or in Nepal was a hard situation for them, and they were looking to give their children a better education, better prospects in the future. I think that was the key driver to migrate to Europe. They didn't have the same opinion about which country to migrate. So my mother wanted to go to Canada, and my father wanted to go to Switzerland.
And I was wondering, now at that time in Switzerland, I assume there were not many Tibetans there, were there? Did you have Tibetan friends as growing up?
Yeah, of course. We went to Flaville, where already a lot of Tibetans were there, and even we had relatives living there. And so all the relatives were uncles and aunties, and everyone was related with each other. So it's the same today, but that time even more. I think it was a quite closed community, and my parents didn't speak very well German. So it was mostly up to the children to do the integration work. So they went to school. They got in contact with the teacher. They helped the parents doing the bureaucratic stuff, and go to the community authorities of offices and do all the paper stuff and things, do the translation and so on. And so I think we had a nice childhood there. And
when you say we, who are you talking about? Your father, your mother?
Yeah, my sisters and my brother. We were 4. Working class, exactly. Yeah, the working class, but that time there was the working class was big, quite big at that time. As a Tibetan, you knew that you were even behind the other migration populations, like the Italians or the Greek or the Turkish. The Tibetan were somewhere apart. And
you said behind. What do you mean?
Yeah,
Tibetans were
behind
the others?
Because often we compared the wages. I asked my friend who was Italian now, so how much does your father earn? And so I didn't do a survey or something like that, but at that time I knew that others were earning more than my parents did. They were doing the same job. It was not fair, but I guess it was some kind of Tibetan thing, not to talk out straight or complain about it, just to agree with circumstances that were there, and so not to get in conflict with anyone, and
trying to accommodate. I can totally appreciate that. It's comparing yourself with others. At the same time, we only know the lives we live in, right? And you try to make the best of it. I think that's a quality that at least some of the Tibetans I know are trying to live. Make the best of it. When you compared yourself with other people, did you think it was a bad situation you were in?
No, I think the situation was good as a Tibetan, as a child in a Tibetan family. You have even, especially when you're a boy, you all have a lot of freedom. So we weren't strolling around in the village that my Swiss German friends could never do because they were not allowed to. And so the rearing of the children was more strict when I was looking at my Swiss friends, and so there were more rules and unwritten rules and how to behave in some situation. And so we never had these limitations.
But at the same time, you had this huge responsibility because your parents didn't speak proper German, but they had to deal with all the bureaucracy. And you said that you and your brother and your sisters, you had to help out.
Yeah, sometimes we had to help out, or uncle and auntie. Sometimes that was done later when we were like teenagers, when we were more grown up. But we sometimes had to go and support them, of course, and because we could speak the language properly.
How old were you when you first accompanied, let's say, your parents to the office or something to help out?
Perhaps something between 12 and 15, and sometimes we just accompanied them, and it was normal for us. It's just normal.
And how did the people react when they saw there's this 12-year-old boy who is translating?
It normally was just my mother. So there was some agreement at that time between my mother and my father, because the external affairs was only the area of my mother, because she was younger and she could talk better German. They had an agreement that everything what was external relation, that was her job. Yeah, and she did the best she could, at that time. And looking back, I think it was a great responsibility for her, and even with 4 kids, and then do all the stuff with the authorities, and even help other relatives to deal with the authorities. That was quite a lot of responsibility, I think, for her.
I can feel that, because until this day, my parents sometimes send me things like photos of letters from, let's say, the insurance company. They ask me, do we need to do anything?
Ausländerkind, we say that. No?
Yeah, it's loosely translated a foreigner child. I mean, that's what we were.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
you grew up in Switzerland, I grew up in Germany, and of course we helped out. It was not a bad thing. It was just nothing special. It was normal for us.
Right? Well, did you have any situation where you had this visit to the authority, and then your parents got angry because they didn't get what they wanted?
I never had this. Did you have this?
Did you experience that?
No, I never had this, luckily.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we had this, and then it was like, oh, it's your fault because your translation was too bad or something like that. Yeah, you translated it wrongly. And I think this experience, and a lot of children with migration background have this, I think.
Yes, I think it's not solely exclusive to us Tibetans.
Yeah, and I think there's too much responsibility putting on children's shoulders. There was no other option.
Yeah. So apart from that, you went through the whole Swiss experience, right? I mean, kindergarten, yes, I assume.
Kindergarten, yeah, and we always have to do. That's a funny story. There's a Fasnacht. It's a carnival, some like carnival in Germany, Austria, in Europe. This is a big thing in between Was it February?
Yeah,
March?
usually February. Right around Le Sa, actually.
Yeah, and you dress like some clown or Superman or something like that. And we were always dressed with our chupa, traditional chupa.
Yeah.
And when, especially also on Lhasa, so we still went to school on Lhasa, and so, but we had to wear our chupa. Well,
You wore chubas for
yeah.
Tibetan Lhasa and you went to normal Swiss school?
It was in kindergarten. I have to, at that time. And my parents and all the Tibetans, they were really, really attached to that, to the traditions. And especially, I think they understood their living in Switzerland also as a mission to preserve our culture, although they were in exile.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried their best. And although I think mostly Tibetans, a lot of Tibetans, they were quite uneducated, but they tried their best to do this, to reach this goal.
Mm-hmm. So did you speak Tibetan at home?
Yes, but it's very poor now.
Yeah, okay. But so you always spoke Tibetan with your parents?
Yes.
So you never spoke, you were not allowed to speak German or Swiss German?
Well, of course, we did. We didn't care. So, yeah, we talked German, of course, with my sisters, and we were surrounded by Swiss German, and of course, children speaks the language that is useful the most for his purposes.
Absolutely, yeah, sure. So, how was school for you? I mean, did you enjoy going to school?
The funny thing is, I didn't remember really school like it was some. It wasn't that conscious for me going to school. I just went there.
You had to go.
Went there, yeah, and everyone was going there, and I had to go. And then once a friend of mine told me I was in the first class that I've never did my homework, and
you never did your homework.
Yeah, and I would say there was no. It was complete chaos. I didn't do my homework. I didn't do it right, and things like this. But I was never so. It was for me. It was not that conscious. That was school. I went there, and then I went home. But it was a place where all my friends were going. But I didn't recognize school as something that was that it was an education system. I don't know if it was some lack of from my parents to tell us the relevance of the education.
Did your parents push you at school? I mean, like say, hey, Chompel, you need to do your homework, or when are your exams? I mean, the things like nowadays many parents do, when talking to their children about school.
I think they were pushing, but they never understood the education system, and that was the problem, no? Or they didn't have a clue about what was taught there. So
obviously, it's different.
So they just said you have to get good grades, and that doesn't help you as a child. So it puts pressure on you, of course, and yeah.
Parents are you can only do what you yourself have experienced, right? And I mean, thinking about your parents coming from Tibet, India, and then coming to Switzerland, where everything is so different, it's just very challenging to understand. And then obviously they want the best for your children, but obviously they have to provide as well, right? I mean, the emotional attention is a huge challenge, and there were not many people they could turn to, I guess. So you went to school because your friends were there, and at what stage did you realize that education is important to you?
Well, I think it was about in the 4th grade. Yeah, I had one book that was really that interests me. I never read a lot of books, and we didn't have a lot of books at home. But my father was a monk in Tibet. There was some education, of course, in our in our family, but it was useless in Switzerland. So the transfer of educational how do you say merits, or the education from Tibet or from India to Switzerland. So it was a loss, and but there was a sense of education. Of course, they had they knew what the importance of education was, and everything what we needed for the education they provided. Of course, yeah.
So you said there was a book that influenced your life.
Yes, it was about conquerors. Yeah, that was amazing. It was amazing for me, and I read this book, and I knew that this book was on our kitchen table. It was full of butter from fingerprints from the butter when I turned the pages. And so, yeah, that was the first book I've read completely. so that was fascinating me.
And that changed your attitude towards
school?
school?
Then I was interested in this stuff, and then I got interested in other stuff. So, like, yeah, that how education works. So you need an anchor point where you start from, and then you realize that there are other fields that are also very interesting, and then you start reading this and that, and so yeah. So also my marks got better then, and so yeah, I did quite well in school.
What about your siblings? I mean, are you the oldest?
No, second youngest. So I have two older sisters and a younger brother.
Because, I mean, in many families, when you have older siblings, they're the ones who influence you heavily, right? What was their influence like on you?
Oh, I think not that much. There was not such a... of course, we spent time together and everything, but my sisters, yeah, they did their own stuff, and were a few years older than me, and I was the oldest boy, and that was, you know that from your family. In Tibetan tradition culture, the boy is still, there's a really strong patriarchal system, and the boy is still some kind of prince in the family. And even when you're the oldest one, you have privileges that your sisters, even when they are 3 years older, they don't have that.
Okay, so let's move down a few years. So you're at school, you're turning like 13, 14. Were you I mean, were there other Tibetans in your class, or were they all, I mean, Swiss people?
No, there were more or less all Swiss people, or the other foreigners, kids of other foreigners like Italian, Turkish, Greek. A lot of that area where we lived, there was like a foreigner area, because the thing was the fabric where our parents worked. They also built the houses for the workers, and they rented it out to the workers. So all the foreigners lived together in kind of, I wouldn't say like it wasn't a ghetto, but it was kind of, they were all more or less in the same place. So we grew up with quite a diverse area. It was always fun with them. So we got to speak Italian and Spanish and everything, although not very good, but yeah, we experienced it. I can still remember the smell in the kitchen of my friend's home. His mother was Spanish and his father was Italian. There was all this olive oil smell in the kitchen and in the apartment.
I can vouch for your Italian skills because I've heard you talk Italian. Of course, my Italian is non-existent, but it sounds really good when you talk Italian. So
yeah, really, I've been a few times since then. Yeah.
yeah. Hey, I want to talk I want to tell our listeners from out of Tibet how we got to know each other. No, it's been quite a few years ago. Feel free to correct me. No, So when I first kind of noticed you, I think you were very active in the Tibetan community in Switzerland. And I was down there in Switzerland. We went there like every 2 years or every year for these big Tibetan gatherings. And I met you, I saw you, we talked a little bit through some acquaintances. At that time, you struck me as different from other Tibetans that I had known until then. Because just to frame it a little bit, one of the things somebody told me, I'm not going to name any names, somebody said, yeah, Chompel, he's like our Tibetan bohemian. That was the kind of nickname that stuck in my head, And then somebody said, he traveled the world, he went on this world tour. And for me, I have my prejudices as well, obviously. I thought, hey, these Tibetans in Switzerland or these Swiss in general, they have all mapped out plans, what to do with their lives, and they are a certain way. But I somehow felt, and I still do, you were quite different from other Tibetans that I had known. How would you respond to that?
Well, I don't know how to say that, but perhaps it was, we were a little bit also, we lived in the eastern part of Switzerland. We are a little bit apart from the center where all the Tibetans lived. Mostly they live in Zurich and the areas around. And I always was interested in many things, in many areas. And I like to live a good life, of course, and looking for happiness. And I was not always that career planned guy and trying to reach the biggest goal, but I was always looking for enjoyment as well. Yeah, and
enjoying the life,
enjoying the life, and get into contact with different people, to connect with many people. I did once around the world tour at that time. And
when did you do that, and why did you do that?
Yeah, perhaps it was I don't know. It's like getting back to my first book I've read, to see the world. No, see the world at least, and that was something I was always interested in. One thing is I was always feeling there must be more than just the Tibetan community to this in this life. Backpacking around the world showed me, yes, we are part of this world and not apart from one nation. But we are human beings, and seeing the world. Yeah, I think that made me humble. See it?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean,
seeing the world and
curious at the same time, right?
Curious, and it's a wonderful opportunity. But that was before all the climate change discussions and everything at that time. Nowadays, I think it's. I don't know if I would do it again. Travel around the world by plane. Wow.
Yeah, nowadays you probably take the train and travel through Europe, for example, right? So did you do the world tour after school, or when was that time?
No, that was after my first study. No, I finished school here and did mandatory schooling. Yeah, that was 9 years, and then I did a school for public administration for like 2 years, and then I started work at the Swiss Post. Yes, at that time. And
what did you do at the Post?
I did an apprenticeship for like 2 years, and doing that was the greatest integration lesson I've done in my life. I think that was the biggest step to getting to know what the Swiss culture is about, the Swiss identity is about. When you get to go to work for like the Post, they were like really Swiss institutions.
So you really got to know who the real, so to speak, Swiss are.
How they work, how it works, and the culture behind that. And I was always kind of exotic in these areas because there was no Tibetan at that time. But Tibetans always had a very good image, so that was a advantage for me in doing that apprenticeship. But it was hard for me to learn this. So, always being very exact.
You were confined to rules, I assume, because the post
Yes.
has to make sure that it arrives on time, and there's no space for error, I guess, right?
There's small space for errors, and there were also like the shifts were also special. So sometimes you started at the morning at 5 o'clock, and then you got a break at 10, 11 o'clock, and then you started again at 4 o'clock. The apprenticeship was, for me, a good lesson in integration and learning to know the Swiss culture. After school, there was a few possibilities, and the first possibility I dropped out. That was working for Swiss Air. Everybody wanted to work for Swiss Air. Well, there was the biggest, was the most famous corporation in Switzerland, and everybody they called it the flying bank at that time. And the Swiss Air was highly profitable, and the jobs were
sought after,
great there,
Okay.
and everybody wanted to work there.
You dropped out,
but I dropped out there because I didn't get in. So the post was the second and last chance for me.
So you were like 19, 20 at that stage?
Yeah, 18, and there was 2 years of apprenticeship. And
you thought you were going to stay on forever, or what happened next?
No, I was so sure that I was leaving as fast as possible, because sometimes we had to learn all the transportation numbers, like the train lines, train connections, and such a stupid. It's a hard word to say, stupid, but for me it was a bit senseless, to learn these things. And it was funny that there were friends of mine that were in that apprenticeship. They were second or third generation working for the post, so there was like dynasties of families that were for 50 or 100 years they worked for the post. But it's really like the traditional system as in early times, like you got the job that your father did already. Yeah, but it was a safe time at that time, comparing to today. There was the post was a monopolistic corporation, and the jobs were safe, they were well paid. And
I mean, think about it. Coming from a migrational background, there's always been unsteadiness in our lives, right? Especially in the first generations, especially with your parents. I mean, it's
of course
impossible to fathom what our parents must have felt like when they left their countries.
Exactly.
And then, of course, I think for some of us, it just makes intuitively sense to find something where there's a safe harbor to make, to earn money. I mean, to know that you have a steady job. And after you finished at the post office, what happened then?
I went to study, yes, exactly, economics. I knew that I had to leave because that job would have made me crazy. I had discussions with my mother at that time and my parents. For them it was a dream job. It was a safe and well paid and a guarantee for steadiness for them, and they didn't understand my decision or my desire for changing my job. They had another perspective on life, and we at that time had all your professional life was open. You could do a study or change the job and get in a complete other direction. So
what I hear is you are actually really strong-headed, although your parents didn't really approve of it, right? I mean, you were like 19 or 20 years old. I mean, that must have been super difficult. At the same time, maybe it made you feel motivated to really, make the best of it. And I mean, at what stage are we talking about your engagement or involvement with Tibetan affairs? How did this start? And what was memorable from back then?
I think that was later. I started quite late with the Tibetan Youth Association. That was at the age of 30. But I was in the Tibetan Youth Association, like in a small section in Flaville before. But at that time, I was pretty young, and then it was my father's idea to the minimum number of members was at that time five people. He had 4 people, and I was officially I was too young to join the Tibetan Youth Association, but he just put me in. So he had 5 persons. So we started the Tibetan Youth Association in Flaville that still exists. We started with doing stuff. We cooked momos and sell them in the local community, in the fairs that were in Flaville. And at that time I wasn't really interested in politics and Tibetan affairs, because I was too young at that time. But later on, yes, Tibet was always a part of our family life, because we always went to rallies, to demonstrations, and my parents always were active in the Tibetan community.
You finished your studies, economics, you said, and then suddenly this interest for political engagement for Tibet started to begin. I mean, why was that? Was that just because of your age, or was there another reason why you got more involved into politics and away from just a purely cultural activity?
When I was traveling, I was always telling that I was Tibetan from Switzerland and everything, and somehow I felt like I was a kind of ambassador for our culture. When I met people, they asked me about Tibet, and somehow I realized that I don't know that much about Tibet. I thought I want to get more involved with Tibetan issues, and so I can be a better ambassador for the Tibetan cause. I met so many people, and there was always this interest in Tibet. So everybody was interested in the Tibetan cause. All the people, mostly, they knew about Tibet, the Tibetan issue. I am a Tibetan, and I have to know more about Tibet and the issue, and I felt like I have to do more for Tibet, and not as like in a conservative way, I thought, but bringing also a modern view of the Tibetan issue. Not that traditional religious Buddhistic picture of Tibet. That was a bit kind of motivation for me to get more involved with Tibetan movement.
I mean, that's also one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I mean, while I appreciate all the religious aspects, there's more to it. There's all this huge secular world to Tibet, or Tibet to us Tibetans, and at the same time, you're saying, you had this coming of age story. I mean, we feel more responsibility because there's not so many Tibetans abroad. It was one of the first things you said when we started, that when people meet you, they say, "Oh, you're the first person I've ever met from Tibet." Mm-hmm. So if we make a good impression, and we all know you can't change the first impression.
Exactly.
I somehow feel that now it's great for all of us Tibetans. At the same time, it puts so much pressure on us because it's an additional responsibility. And what I don't want is I don't want to lose myself or my identity just because I have to make a good first impression. Mm. So when you turned towards political engagement, what did you do? You went to the Tibetan Youth Congress. You were because I remember you were also on the board of, I think, Tibetan Youth Congress. Later on, you also became an editor at this political magazine, Tibetan Review. Right? How did this happen?
I think that we all have a political fate in the end. We lost our land. where our parents had to flee, and I think this experience makes us all political. We all have to deal with this political question about losing our land and our independence. And I think for sooner or later, every Tibetan has to deal with this question. But I didn't have a plan or something like that. I knew that I want to engage more in the Tibetan Youth Association, and it has a long tradition in Switzerland and a good culture to address this political question also. And I was also interested in all these social questions about being Tibetan or being Swiss or being both together at once.
I mean, it's very precious if you think about it, that, you know, you could have a great plan and map out your whole life and it'll all turn out to be different. And I always think, well, there's only one chance you have. You need to get involved and do something. And it can be something relatively small. Maybe things will turn up and things will happen. Maybe not, but who knows? As I said, you were part of the Tibetan Review. How did you become an editor of this magazine?
Because I did like to write at that time. And
how old were you then? When was that?
It was about 30 already. It was quite old. So I started writing for the Tibetan Youth Association and later on for the Swiss Tibetan Friendship Association. We had this little magazine, and this was just a hobby for me, and I did like to write. And I was working for a Swiss journal, and I got into journalism at that time, but only for half a year or so. But it was a very good experience for me, and I knew I wanted to write. But it was part of my life at that time, and also sharing my views on Tibet or other issues. I found it important at that time. Yeah.
So, talking about your next experience that's when we deepened our friendship. Basically, is when you came to Berlin, where I live now, right? It sounds to me like you were pretty involved. You were Tibetan Youth Congress, a Tibetan Youth Association in Switzerland. You were involved in journalism, and then suddenly you decided to go to Berlin.
Yes, I was in Switzerland working for a Swiss bank and part-time studying.
The bank, we didn't talk about the bank. There was a bank in between. What happened there?
I was working with my another Tibetan friend in a Swiss bank. There were a lot of Tibetans in financial industry at that time, still, and in Zurich area there are a lot of Tibetans working there. And I got a job there in a bank. And
your parents must have been happy.
Of course, at that time, I think finding a job wasn't that a problem. My relationship with that my girlfriend at that time broke up, and I was looking for something new, doing something new, and there was this job advertisement of international campaign for Tibet in Berlin, and I thought that's a great opportunity. I always wanted to go to Berlin, and finding a job there, working for Tibet. That was 2008 when the Olympic Summer Games in Beijing happened, and they were looking for a campaigning coordinator, and I got the job. And later on, we met there.
Again?
Yes, you and your sister were the only person I knew in Berlin.
Yeah.
So I had to contact you.
We made Chapale together. 2008 in Berlin was quite different to now in 2025. I fondly remember these times, and we got to know each other better, and I do appreciate that. I think you've become a really good friend of mine. And when I wrote my PhD later on, and I celebrated my PhD when I got it. You came all the way from Switzerland to celebrate. That was a real token of friendship, I thought. And afterwards, of course, we made a real small Tibetan sideways tour and had a lot of wine.
Tour.
A lot of wine.
That was so fun.
In Germany.
So fun.
But okay, I'm getting off track. So now talking about international campaign for Tibet, one of the largest NGOs active for the Tibetan cause. So you did a few years, if I remember correctly. We worked together a bit.
1.5 years. Yeah,
1.5 years. We worked together for a few months during that very, very active times. And 1.5 years later, you went back to Switzerland. Why did you go back to Switzerland? And
when you're very young and you go to Berlin, it's you have a great time. Of course.
We did have a great time.
And I was 34, 35 years old, and I was comparing it to Switzerland, the life in Germany, and one thing is economic situation in Berlin at that time was the wages was extremely low compared to Switzerland, and even to have a family. And I was sure, like, I'm not going to have a family in Berlin because it's really hard to have enough money and the wage to live there. Yeah, I knew Switzerland had a very privileged position, and I thought, yes, I have to go back when I want to build a family, and also for my kids. I think, yeah, growing up in Switzerland is a good place, but I couldn't imagine a future with family in Berlin at that time. Today, I would think of it perhaps a bit differently, but yeah, I was convinced to go back to Switzerland. Yeah.
So you went back to Switzerland and then you got married?
got married, got children. Well, my wife got children, but yeah, have family. Yeah, 2 kids, 2 girls.
Now that obviously leads me to the next question. What do you do nowadays?
I work now for the canton Sankt Gallen. That's the state government in the local area, I believe. For the Ministry of Interior Affairs. I work as a Deputy Secretary General since 2005. Yeah.
20 years, going really steady, which is interesting because it's quite a stark contrast.
Sorry, no, 2005, 2015.
2015. Sorry. Okay, so 10 years. It's still quite a contrast to your experience beforehand, where you always tried out different things. How would you describe the current political atmosphere in Switzerland, maybe from a Tibetan point of view?
It has now changed. I think Switzerland, has made this development of having a strong right party like 10, 15 years ago already. We see the uprising of these right-wing parties in whole Europe, but in fact, in Switzerland, this development has already taken place. Like in 1990, Switzerland voted against the joining the European Union at that time. Like, I think since then, the right-wing party SVP, it's called, they got stronger and stronger. It's now the biggest party in Switzerland. So what we see in Europe already happened in Switzerland a long time ago. And at the moment, I think for every minority group, it's a very difficult time, and we are facing a really dangerous threat to democracy in Switzerland as well. Also, although the justice system is quite independent, but still the influence of the biggest party is quite quite big, and the tone or the sound of their policy is getting harsher and harsher. And then I think the first people that will suffer under this politics will be people from minorities with other color and other sexual orientation. I think this is a threat to many people now. I often think of my kids, how they will grow up later, and what kind of life they will have. And I'm not so optimistic at the moment.
Now you've touched upon the political landscape in Switzerland, what it is like. So you being in politics yourself, what are the topics you push for? What do you think needs to change in Switzerland?
So I've been in the local parliament in the city where I live, in Sankt Gallen, since 4 years. Fortunately, we have quite some left majority in our city, and we were able to do a progressive policy, a social democratic policy, and helping people that are living under difficult circumstances. It's a social question. It's about changing people's living condition. That people have a better access to chances to life. One of the key motivation and key factors I got into politics was I wasn't satisfied with the Swiss conservative politics we have in our state. And one thing is also to represent minorities and to give them minority also a voice in local parliaments. When I look at our parliament in our city, we are two people that have another color. The one guy is from Sri Lanka, and the other one is me. And
how many are there all together?
63 in the local parliament in our city. That's the city of Sankt Gallen, 63 seats. And yes, when I go around our city, like it's an 80,000 people city. It's a small city compared to cities in the world, but it's quite diverse. You see a lot of people from other countries and other voices. We have the population is consisting of about 138 nations or more. So the situation in the parliament or in the politics doesn't reflect the reality in our lives. I wanted to change that. I wanted to be of the face or one of the faces to represent other population groups in the parliament. So, and when I started politics, it was also the issue of racism we had arising from at that time from the USA. All the discussions about racism in the USA is coming also to Europe, and I think there's a lot of issues that are not covered or not discussed in public because the minority groups are not seen in the public or in the political discussions. We don't have a seat on the table, and we need to bring more people from with different backgrounds into politics. And one thing is, you have to start with yourself.
It's always a question of representation. Now, if we're not represented, we can't rely on other people representing us. You said only two people of color from more than 60 seats. So I mean, super, super important and great that you represent not just Tibetans, but just generally a minority. I think it's super important. To do that job, I imagine it to be a really challenging task. What motivates you? And do you have like a role model apart from Dalai Lama?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a role model, I think. Just as everything in my life, I just start doing it. try to do my best. I don't know. Often the plan arises with the doing. I don't have a plan before, and I want. Sometimes I have a goal to reach. Okay, but how to reach it, I don't know. I often don't know.
I think most of us don't know. I think some people can
Yes.
pretend that they know.
When I see the work in our offices, when we do all the work in the offices, is always very structured and very goal orientated. But I think that's not life. I think often life takes some strange ways, and the best thing is to be flexible, to be open, and to have an open mind. And of course, just start things. We have to start things to get to change things we want to change. But it helps to have a plan, of course. But the plan has to be adjustable in every moment.
I think that's a great way to sum up this whole talk. Sometimes we just need to do things, even if we're not
like
sure. Like this podcast, yeah. I'm not sure if it's going to lead somewhere or not. We've been friends for so many years, but still, I got to know you on a deeper level. So that was really great. I appreciate that so much. And at the same time, we try and experience new things. I think, going out there, talking to other people, maybe sometimes being in an uncomfortable situation to experience something new, doing, traveling the whole world like you did. And I think really important that you represent people who might not be represented at these higher stakes table on a political level. So thank you very much for that, Chompel. I hope you keep on doing things, keep on experiencing new things, and that you keep on being my friend. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Namri. It's nice talking to you.
I hoped you liked this first ever Out of Tibet podcast episode. If you did, I would absolutely appreciate it if you'd consider supporting me financially on my Patreon, so I can continue making more free podcasts for you guys. Please check the show notes for all the details how to support me. And if you don't happen to have money to spare, I would love it if you gave this podcast 5 stars, left a positive review with Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Thank you very much in advance, and see you in Tibet.